I was standing at my kitchen sink that Tuesday morning, washing the breakfast dishes and humming along to the radio, when my phone rang. The sun was streaming through the yellow curtains Frank had helped me pick out 20 years ago, and I remember thinking it was going to be a beautiful day. I dried my hands on my apron and picked up the phone, smiling when I saw Trevor's name on the screen. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, already feeling that warm flutter in my chest that came whenever my son called. But the voice that came through wasn't warm at all. "Mum, I don't have much time," Trevor said, his words clipped and rushed. "We're leaving tomorrow. Your beach house has been sold already. Bye." I stood there, frozen, the phone pressed against my ear. The words didn't make sense. They were English words I knew, but together they sounded like nonsense. "Wait, what? Trevor, what are you—" Then I heard her. Vanessa's voice in the background, high and bright with laughter. That particular giggle she did when she was pleased with herself. My hand started shaking. The beach house. Our beach house. The little blue cottage with the white shutters where Frank proposed to me 40 years ago, down on one knee in the sand at sunset. The place where we spent every summer. Where Trevor learned to swim. Where we built sandcastles and roasted marshmallows and watched the stars. "Trevor, you can't sell my house," I said, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted it to. "That's my house. Mine and your father's." "Not anymore," he said, and there was something in his tone I'd never heard before, something cold. "Look, I gotta go. The movers are coming tomorrow to clear it out. Don't bother going there." My mind was racing backward, tumbling through memories like falling downstairs. 6 months ago, Trevor had come by on a Sunday afternoon with a briefcase and a concerned expression. He'd sat me down at this very kitchen table and spread out some papers. "Mum, we need to talk about estate planning," he'd said, looking so grown up and serious. "With Dad gone, you need to protect yourself from taxes. These papers will transfer the beach house deed into a family trust. It's still yours, but it'll save you thousands in estate taxes when, well, later on." I'd looked at the papers, but the legal language made my head swim. Words like grantor and beneficiary and irrevocable trust all blurred together. Trevor had been so patient, pointing to the signature lines, explaining that it was all routine, that his lawyer friend had helped him set it up specifically to protect me. "You trust me, don't you, Mum?" he'd asked. And his eyes had looked so much like Frank's that my heart ached. Of course I trusted him. He was my son, my baby. So I'd signed where he pointed, and he'd hugged me and promised to take me to lunch next week, except next week never came. He was always too busy. Now, standing in my kitchen with the phone in my hand, I felt something crack open inside my chest. Trevor had lied to me. Those papers hadn't protected me at all. They'd stolen from me. "Trevor," I said, and I heard Vanessa's voice again in the background, closer now. "Is that her? Let me talk to her." Then Vanessa was on the phone, and her voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Hi, Dorothy. Sorry about the short notice, but you know how real estate moves. These opportunities don't wait." "Vanessa," I said slowly, "what have you done?" "What have we done?" she laughed, and this time there was no attempt to hide the edge in it. "We've made a smart business decision. That old shack was just sitting there, collecting dust and costing money in property taxes. Trevor finally grew a spine and did what needed to be done. The developer's paying $850,000. Can you believe it? For that tiny little cottage. $850,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. That wasn't just money. That was every summer of my marriage. That was Frank teaching Trevor to fish off the dock. That was me reading books on the porch swing while seagulls called overhead. That was the last place I'd been truly, completely happy. But then something strange happened. As Vanessa kept talking, her voice getting more excited about curtains and cars and trips to Europe, I felt my fears shift into something else. Something clearer. I remembered Frank, 3 weeks before he died, holding my hand in the hospital. "Dot," he'd said, his voice weak but urgent. I've made sure you're protected. Leo knows everything. If anything ever seems wrong, you call Leo. Promise me." I'd promised, confused about why he seemed so worried. Now, suddenly, I understood. Frank had known. Somehow, he'd known that Trevor might do something like this, and he'd planned for it. A smile started at the corners of my mouth. It grew slowly, spreading across my face until I was grinning like a fool in my empty kitchen. "Dorothy? Hello? Are you even listening?" Vanessa's voice was sharp now, annoyed. "Oh, I'm listening," I said, and my voice came out steady and calm. Calmer than I'd felt in years. "But you forgot one thing." There was a pause. Then Trevor was back on the line. "Mum? What are you talking about?" "What are you talking about, old woman?" Vanessa shouted in the background. I laughed. I actually laughed, and it felt wonderful. "The house you sold," I said, pausing to let it sink in, "was actually—" I stopped myself. Let them wonder. Let them worry. "Actually what?" Trevor demanded, and now I could hear the first hint of uncertainty in his voice. "You know what?" I said, still smiling. "You'll find out soon enough. Enjoy your celebration while it lasts, sweetheart. You're going to need the happy memory." I hung up before he could respond. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I walked across the kitchen, picked up my address book, and found Leo's number. My old friend. Frank's best friend. The man who'd stood beside Frank at our wedding and beside me at Frank's funeral. The man who knew all of Frank's secrets. He answered on the second ring. "Dorothy? Everything okay?" "Leo," I said, and my voice was strong now, clear and certain. "I need you." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Leo's home office, surrounded by mahogany bookshelves stuffed with legal volumes and framed photographs of him and Frank from their college days. Leo had cleared his entire afternoon the moment he heard my voice on the phone. Now he sat across from me, his reading glasses perched on his nose, examining the papers I'd brought with shaking hands. "That little," Leo muttered, then caught himself. "Sorry, Dot, but this is exactly what Frank was afraid of." I watched his face as he read through the documents Trevor had given me 6 months ago. Leo's jaw got tighter with each page he turned. His finger traced lines of text, and occasionally he'd grunt or shake his head. The clock on his wall ticked loudly in the silence. "Tell me," I said quietly. "Tell me what Trevor did." Leo took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He looked older suddenly, tired. "He transferred the beach house into his name. Completely. You don't own it anymore, Dot. Haven't owned it since you signed these papers." The words should have hurt more than they did, but I'd already guessed as much. "And he sold it? For $850,000 to a developer named Hamilton. Guy owns half the coastline already, tearing down family cottages and putting up luxury condos." Leo picked up his phone and started scrolling through something. "The sale closes in 48 hours. Once that happens, the money goes to Trevor, and your cottage gets demolished within the month." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. Frank knew Trevor would do this. "Not exactly this," Leo said carefully, but Frank saw changes in Trevor after he met Vanessa. "Your son started talking about money differently, asking questions about your assets, about property values. It worried Frank. Broke his heart, actually. Why didn't he tell me?" "Because you loved Trevor. Love him. Frank didn't want to put that poison in your mind if he was wrong." Leo stood up and walked to his filing cabinet. "But he also didn't want to leave you unprotected if he was right." He pulled out a thick folder with my name on it and returned to his desk. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. Property records, trust agreements, maps of the coastline. "What is all this?" I asked. Leo spread out a survey map across his desk. It showed the beach house property outlined in blue, but next to it, outlined in red, was another parcel of land. A narrow strip that ran along the eastern edge of the beach house lot. "This," Leo said, tapping the red section, "is what Trevor forgot about, because he never knew it existed." I leaned forward, studying the map. The red parcel was small, maybe 20 feet wide, but it ran the entire length of the property. I don't understand. What is that? That's the access road to your beach house. The only access road. It's also where all the utility lines run. Electric, water, sewage, everything. Leo's expression was grim but satisfied. Without this land, the beach house is landlocked. Worthless for development. You can't tear it down and build condos if you can't get construction equipment to the site. You can't sell luxury homes if they don't have running water or electricity. My heart started beating faster. And who owns this land? Frank bought it 32 years ago, before Trevor was even born. He put it in a trust with me as the trustee. Leo pulled out another document. The trust has very specific terms. The land can never be sold. It can only be transferred to Trevor if he proves himself trustworthy and responsible. Otherwise, upon your death, it goes to the Coastal Heritage Preservation Fund. I stared at the papers, at Frank's signature at the bottom, dated just 3 months before he died. He updated this recently. He added a clause, Leo said softly. If Trevor ever defrauded you or tried to steal from you, the land would immediately transfer to the charity. No second chances. And selling my house without my real consent counts as fraud. Yes. Leo picked up his phone again. I need to make some calls. This developer needs to know what he's buying. Or rather, what he's not buying. While Leo made his calls, I sat back in the leather chair and let myself remember Frank. Not Frank in the hospital at the end, but Frank as he was. Strong and steady and always thinking 3 steps ahead. He'd been an engineer, brilliant with numbers and plans. He'd built our whole life with the same careful attention to detail he brought to his bridges and buildings. He'd built protection for me too, knowing I'd need it. Leo's voice pulled me back to the present. He was talking to someone named Hamilton. His tone professional but firm. Yes, Mr. Hamilton. I understand you've invested significant capital. That's exactly why we need to meet. There's a complication with the property access rights. No, this can't wait. My office. Tomorrow morning at 9. Trust me, you'll want to hear this before that sale closes. He hung up and looked at me. Hamilton's coming in tomorrow. When he finds out the property's worthless without the access land, he's going to lose his mind. And then he's going to come after Trevor for misrepresentation. Trevor doesn't have the money anymore, does he? I asked. Though I already knew the answer. Vanessa spent it. From what you told me about her excitement on the phone, I'd bet most of it's already gone. New car, furniture, vacation plans. Leo shook his head. Trevor's going to be facing a lawsuit he can't pay, for money he doesn't have, over a property he never really owned. I should have felt happy. Vindicated. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. Sad for the teenager who cried at his father's funeral. Sad for the man who'd let greed and a manipulative woman turn him into someone I didn't recognize. What happens now? I asked. Now? Leo smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Now Trevor learns what his father tried to teach him. Actions have consequences, and family isn't something you sell for cash. The next morning, I was back in Leo's office, sitting in the corner like a ghost while Mr. Hamilton stormed in at exactly 9 o'clock. He was a big man, expensive suit, gold watch that probably cost more than my car. His face was red even before he started talking. This better be important, Patterson, Hamilton growled, dropping his briefcase on Leo's desk with a thud. I've got a closing in 2 days and 3 other deals backing up behind it. Leo didn't stand up. Didn't offer to shake hands. He just gestured to the chair across from him and slid the survey map across the desk. You might want to sit down for this, Leo said calmly. Hamilton glanced at the map, then at Leo, then back at the map. I watched his eyes move across the red outlined parcel, saw the exact moment understanding started to dawn. His face went from red to pale to purple. What am I looking at? He asked. But his voice had changed. It wasn't loud anymore. That's the only access road to the property you just bought. Leo explained. It's also where every utility line runs. Power, water, sewage, all of it crosses this parcel. And? Hamilton's hands were gripping the edge of the desk now. And you don't own it. Can't own it. It's held in an irrevocable trust that prohibits sale under any circumstances. Leo leaned back in his chair. Without this land, your property is landlocked. No access for construction equipment. No utilities for the luxury condos you're planning. The beach house you bought is worthless. Hamilton stood up so fast his chair fell backward. That's impossible. My team did a full title search. There was nothing about adjacent parcels or access issues. The trust was set up 32 years ago under a different LLC name. Easy to miss if you're not looking carefully. Leo's voice was still calm, almost bored. But it's there. Legal and binding. Hamilton grabbed his phone and started barking orders at someone. I could hear a woman's voice on the other end, panicked, promising to pull all the records immediately. He paced Leo's office like a caged animal, breathing hard through his nose. This is fraud, Hamilton said, spinning to face Leo. That Bennett kid sold me a worthless piece of land. He had to know about this. I don't think he did, Leo said, glancing at me. I think he assumed the beach house was a complete property. He never checked the full records. He just saw an opportunity and took it. Hamilton's face went through several expressions before settling on rage. I paid $850,000. The closing is in 2 days. Then I'd suggest you cancel the closing, Leo said. Or accept that you just bought the most expensive paperweight on the East Coast. Hamilton made another call. This time I heard him clearly because he was shouting. Get me Trevor Bennett on the phone. Now. I don't care if he's in a meeting, pull him out. This is urgent. He waited, his foot tapping against Leo's carpet. When someone finally answered, Hamilton's voice dropped to something dangerous and quiet. Bennett, Hamilton here. We have a problem with your little beach house sale. A big problem. I'm looking at a survey map right now that shows your property is worthless without access land you don't own and never disclosed. He paused, listening. I don't want to hear excuses. You have 48 hours to return my money, every penny, or my lawyers will bury you in lawsuits for fraudulent misrepresentation. Do you understand me? He hung up without waiting for an answer and turned back to Leo. If that money isn't back in my account by Friday, I'm suing everyone. Bennett, his wife, and anyone else involved in this disaster. Mrs. Whitmore had no knowledge of the sale, Leo said firmly. Her son misled her into signing transfer papers. She's a victim here too. Hamilton looked at me for the first time. Really looked at me. I must have seemed small and old and harmless, sitting there in my cardigan with my purse on my lap. His expression softened just a fraction. I'm sorry for your trouble, ma'am, he said, his voice almost gentle. But your son just cost me a fortune. He cost me something more valuable than money, I said quietly. He cost me my trust. Hamilton left a few minutes later, still making angry phone calls to his lawyers. Leo and I sat in silence for a while after he was gone. The morning sun had shifted, throwing new shadows across the office. Trevor's whole world is about to collapse, Leo said finally. Hamilton's right. That money's probably spent. Vanessa doesn't strike me as the saving type. I thought about my son right now, somewhere in his fancy apartment, getting that phone call. I imagined the panic, the cold sweat, the way his hands would shake as he realized what he'd done. Part of me wanted to call him, to fix it somehow, to make it better the way I used to when he skinned his knee or failed a test. But I couldn't fix this. This was too big, too broken. And maybe that was the lesson he needed to learn. I should go home, I said, standing up. My legs felt tired, like I'd walked miles instead of just sitting in a chair. Bev's waiting for you there, Leo said. I called her this morning. Figured you might need a friend. I hugged him then. This old man who'd been Frank's best friend and mine. Who'd kept Frank's secrets and protected me when I didn't even know I needed protection. Thank you, I whispered. Frank would have done the same for me, he said. I drove home slowly, not really seeing the streets I'd known my whole life. My phone rang 3 times. Trevor's name flashed on the screen each time. I let it go to voicemail. When I pulled into my driveway, Bev was sitting on my front porch with 2 cups of coffee. She didn't ask questions. She just handed me a cup and put her arm around my shoulders. "It's going to get worse before it gets better," she said. "I know," I replied. We sat there together, drinking coffee in the morning sun, waiting for whatever came next. Trevor showed up at my door at 11 o'clock that night. I was already in my pajamas, sitting with Bev in the living room, both of us pretending to watch television, but really just staring at the screen without seeing anything. When the doorbell rang, Bev stood up first. "You don't have to let him in, Dot." But he was still my son. No matter what he'd done, I couldn't turn him away without at least hearing what he had to say. I opened the door. Trevor looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes were red and wild. He was holding a folder stuffed with papers, and his hands were shaking. "Mom, please, I need to talk to you." I stepped aside and let him in. Bev moved to leave, but I caught her hand. "Stay," I said. I needed her there. Needed a witness to whatever was about to happen. Trevor and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where he'd done his homework as a boy. Where Frank had taught him to play chess. Where we'd celebrated every birthday and holiday for 38 years. Now it felt like a courtroom. "Hamilton called me," Trevor said, his voice cracking. "He's threatening to sue. He wants his money back by Friday or he's taking everything. Mom, you have to help me." I folded my hands on the table and waited. I didn't say anything. "It was all a misunderstanding," Trevor continued, the words tumbling out fast. "I was trying to help you. The beach house was just sitting there, costing money in taxes. I thought if I sold it, I could invest the money for you, make it grow. I was going to give you most of it back, I swear." Still, I said nothing. Trevor's face shifted, and I saw anger flash across it. "This is Vanessa's fault. She pushed me into this. She kept saying we deserved to live better, that you were being selfish keeping all that property when we were struggling. She made me do it." "Did she forge my signature?" I asked quietly. "What?" "No, but did she force your hand to move when you signed the transfer papers?" "Mum, that's not fair. You don't understand the pressure I was under." "Then help me understand," I said. "Explain to me how stealing your mother's house is somehow my fault or your wife's fault or anyone's fault but yours." Trevor's face crumpled. He put his head in his hands, and his shoulders started shaking. When he looked up, tears were running down his face. "I'm in trouble, Mum. Real trouble. The money's gone. Vanessa spent it on a car and furniture, and she booked this vacation to Italy. I tried to stop her, but she said we deserved it. And now Hamilton wants it all back, and I don't have it. I'll lose everything. My business, my reputation, everything." "You'll lose your freedom too," Bev said from the doorway. "What you did is called fraud. That's a crime." Trevor turned to her, his face desperate. "Mum, please. You have to sign over that access land. If I can give Hamilton a complete property, he might drop the lawsuit. Please, I'm begging you." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for. I remembered him at 5 years old, bringing me flowers he'd picked from the neighbor's garden. At 10, reading to me from his favorite books. At 15, crying when his first girlfriend broke his heart. At 25, walking across the stage to get his college diploma, while Frank and I cheered in the crowd. Where had that boy gone? When had he turned into this stranger who could look me in the eye and steal from me? "When you called me yesterday," I said slowly, "and told me you'd sold my house, did you feel anything? Any guilt? Any sadness at all?" Trevor opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence that followed was my answer. "Your father knew this might happen," I said. "He saw you changing after you met Vanessa. Saw you getting greedy, talking about money all the time, caring less about family and more about what you could inherit. It broke his heart. Dad wouldn't want you to destroy me over this, Trevor said desperately. Your father created that trust specifically to protect me from you, I replied, and my voice was steady even though my heart was breaking. He set it up so that if you ever tried to defraud me or steal from me, you'd lose everything. Not as punishment, but as protection. For both of us. I pulled out the trust documents Leo had given me and spread them on the table. Trevor stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. The access land transfers to charity the moment you commit fraud against me. Selling my house without my real consent counts as fraud. I tapped the papers. This was your father's last gift to you, Trevor. A consequence big enough to maybe wake you up before you destroyed yourself completely. You're going to let Hamilton sue me? Let me go to jail? I'm going to let you face what you've done, I said. Because I love you too much to save you from this. If I sign over that land, if I bail you out, what will you learn? That you can steal from your own mother and get away with it? That there's always someone to clean up your messes? Trevor stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. I'm your son! How can you do this to me? I'm your mother, I said, standing to face him. And the best thing I can do for you right now is let you fall. Maybe when you hit bottom, you'll finally understand what you've thrown away. Vanessa was right about you, Trevor spat. You're a selfish, vindictive old woman. The words stung, but I didn't let him see it hurt. Then I guess you married someone just like me. Trevor grabbed his folder and headed for the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob and turned back one last time. When I lose everything, when I'm living on the street, will you be happy then? No, I said honestly. I'll be heartbroken. But I'll know I did the right thing. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. 2 months passed like a slow, painful dream. I spent most of that time at the beach house, the cottage that was mine again through a twist of legal fate I still didn't fully understand. Hamilton had abandoned the purchase when he realized the property was worthless without the access land. The sale contract fell apart, and somehow, through paperwork and clauses I let Leo handle, the house came back to me. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Every room held ghosts now. I was sitting on the porch swing one morning, watching the sun come up over the water, when Bev came out with 2 mugs of coffee. She'd been staying with me on and off, never asking if I wanted company, just showing up when she knew I needed her. Leo called, she said, settling beside me. He wanted you to know the lawsuit's been settled. I took the coffee but didn't drink it. What happened? Trevor declared bankruptcy. Hamilton's lawyers will get some of the money back but not all of it. The car got repossessed. The fancy furniture too. Bev paused. Vanessa filed for divorce 6 weeks ago. Left him the day she realized there was nothing left to take. I should have felt something. Satisfaction maybe, or vindication. Instead, I just felt empty and tired. Where is he now? Living in a studio apartment in the old part of town. Working as a salesman at Murphy's car dealership. The owner felt sorry for him. Gave him a job. Bev watched my face carefully. Leo says he's been going to therapy. Court-ordered at first, but he's still going even though he doesn't have to anymore. I nodded and sipped my coffee. It had gone cold. Over the next few weeks, I made some decisions. Mr. Hamilton, despite everything, had reached out through Leo with an interesting proposal. He knew a conservation group looking to protect coastline from development. They wanted to buy the beach house and the access land together, turn it all into a protected preserve. They'd keep the cottage standing as a historical landmark, a place where families could visit and learn about coastal ecology. The offer was fair, more than fair, and something about it felt right. Frank would have liked knowing that our little piece of heaven would be preserved, protected, shared with others instead of torn down for profit. I accepted. Used part of the money to set up a scholarship fund in Frank's name for students studying environmental conservation. Donated the rest to various charities. Kept only enough to live comfortably, which wasn't much. I'd never needed much anyway. The Coastal Heritage Preservation Fund, now holding the access land, worked with the conservation group to turn the area into something beautiful. something meaningful, something that would outlast all of us. I visited the cottage one last time before the transfer became final. Walked through every room, touching the walls, remembering. Frank reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. Trevor, small and sunburned, sleeping on the couch after a long day at the beach. The three of us playing cards on rainy afternoons, laughing until our sides hurt. Those memories were mine to keep. Nobody could sell those. Nobody could take them away. When I got home that evening, there was a letter in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized Trevor's handwriting on the envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was long. Pages and pages in his cramped, messy writing. I made myself read every word. He didn't make excuses. Didn't blame Vanessa or stress or anything else. He took responsibility for what he'd done. Laid it out in painful detail. He wrote about hitting bottom. About sitting in his empty apartment after Vanessa left. Realizing he'd traded everything that mattered for money that was already gone. He wrote about therapy. About learning words like narcissism and entitlement and enmeshment. About understanding how he'd stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an obstacle to what he felt he deserved. He wrote about his new job, how humbling it was to start over at the bottom. About the youth center where he volunteered on weekends, trying to help kids avoid the mistakes he'd made. About the small apartment that was nothing like the luxury condo but felt more honest somehow. He wrote that he was sorry. Not sorry he got caught, not sorry he lost everything, but genuinely sorry for hurting me, for betraying my trust, for selling the cottage where his father proposed to me. And then, at the end, he wrote something that made tears finally come. I don't expect you to forgive me, Mom. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I'm trying to become the son you and Dad deserved. The one I used to be before I forgot what actually matters. I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be, but I'm trying. And if you never want to see me again, I understand. But thank you. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fall. It was the hardest thing you've ever done for me, and the most important. I sat with that letter for a long time. Read it 3 times. Bev found me still sitting at the kitchen table an hour later. The pages spread out in front of me. What are you going to do? She asked gently. I don't know yet, I said honestly. He's my son. I can't forget what he did, and I can't pretend it didn't break something between us. But maybe if he keeps working on himself, keeps being honest, we can find something new. Not what we had before. That's gone forever. But maybe something different, something real. That's fair, Bev said. Whatever you decide, whenever you decide it, I'm here. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my drawer. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. Trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild quickly. It takes years, requires proof, demands consistency. But I didn't throw the letter away either. Life went on. I volunteered at the library 3 days a week. Had coffee with Bev every morning. Tended my garden. Visited the beach preserve sometimes. Watching families explore the cottage that used to be mine. One afternoon, I found myself looking at Frank's photo on the mantel. The one from our 20th anniversary. Both of us grinning like teenagers. You knew, I whispered to his image. You knew this might happen, and you protected me anyway. Even after you were gone. I like to think Frank would be proud of how I handled things. Not with cruelty or revenge, but with firm boundaries and hard love. I'd given Trevor the most difficult gift a mother can give her child. The freedom to face his consequences and the space to grow from them. Whether that growth would lead us back to each other remained to be seen. Some broken things can be mended. Others stay broken but find new purposes. I didn't know which category we fell into yet, but I was whole. Surrounded by true friends. Free from manipulation. And somehow, despite everything, still capable of hope. That seemed like enough.